Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this episode of The Muse Report. On this episode, I sat down with Kawanna Watkins. She is the CEO and founder of KW Global Solutions, where they do consulting in corporate finance. And we get into her career and her story a little bit, but what really blows me away in this interview, which I just loved, was her story of jumping out of her comfort zone to pursue something that she knew she was meant for. So she was doing quite well, she tells us how she worked with a number of companies and she found her sweet spot, and she was doing quite well for herself, was able to live comfortably and do what she wanted to do, and felt quite comfortable and settled in. But something inside of her just said, I can do more. And she kind of struggled with that, which we talk about a little bit, and how she overcome that initial fear of doing something that you don't know the outcome of, which I just thought was amazing. We also talk about her travels a little bit. Kawanna is a world traveler. She's been to more countries than I can count on my hands, I'm pretty sure. And she tells us about some of her travel stories and her favorite countries and some of her not so favorite countries as well. So I think that you will thoroughly enjoy this. Kawanna is a super enthusiastic voice that I'm sure you will love to hear her stories. I know I did, and I think you're in for a treat for this episode. So thanks for tuning in. If you are listening to this episode, just take a quick screenshot of it on your phone, post it on your Instagram story, and then I'll be looking at it. Tag us at the Muse Report Podcast, at the Muse Report Podcast on Instagram. Or you could take a picture and put it on Facebook if you're on Facebook. The same thing, the Muse Report Podcast on Facebook. And I will be reposting all of those story posts on my Instagram story, the Muse Report Podcast Instagram, and shouting you guys out. Just show me that you're listening. Show me that you're tuning in. DM me, telling me what you thought of the episode or what you're expecting next. I will be reposting those, responding when you post those. And it just helps get the word out a little bit about what you are listening to. And it helps me know who is listening as well. So I would appreciate that. Remember, the Muse Report Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. That's about it. We're going to get into this episode. I think we're going to cue up the theme song. Let's go.
Loading.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
It's a case study for success.
Be teachable.
What better way to learn than to just ask?
The learning process becomes a journey.
Turning dreams into realities.
Part of execution is totally believing whatever you're doing is going to work.
What are your passions and what are your gifts? And that's where it really starts.
Chances are for taking. Take a chance on yourself.
Any and everyone is capable of being a leader.
You're not going to have all the answers immediately.
Wow.
Mentors to expose you to things that you otherwise wouldn't know.
It was all I thought about and dreamed. Like I would literally get up in the morning, practice, because I knew the time would come.
Just do it.
Years ago, I've always been interested in process improvement. I've always been interested in consulting, and I don't know, I just had this vision running my own business. Like, that's just what I saw for myself. But it's funny, I remember like a few years ago, like telling that to people, but like, even though I had that vision, I wasn't doing anything towards it. You know, like if people were to say, what's your 5-year plan? I didn't have one. I was just like, because I was comfortable. I was comfortable at my job, you know, got paid well. I was doing well. I had flexibility. And so like things were good. There was no reason for me to shake things up and follow my passion. I was just comfortable. But the biggest fear, but things kind of transpired at work where I was like, you know what? I think I want to do something different. And one of my clients who had wanted to hire me had actually contacted me about working there. And I went to talk to the CFO, and he was asking me a lot of questions. And he was like, you need to decide what you want to do. And I was like, you know what, I do. Because, he's like, you're bright and you have all this one, but he's like, you decide what you want to do. He's like, this is what we can offer you, but you need to figure it out. So I was like, that's a good point. So I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I love what I do. I love it so much. The Lord has blessed that, I'm pretty good at it, but I was like, I just want to do it for myself. Like, I don't want to do it for other people. It got to the point where, for all of our new clients, I was the main one going in, talking to them about what our services were. I was kind of, saying, this is what we can do. Then when we get the work, I would be the one running the project. I'd be managing the budget. I'd be the one dealing directly with the client.
So you're doing everything already.
So I was like, well, why am I doing this for somebody else? Especially because also I had other clients who were saying after they met me, like, oh, she has to be on the project. So I'm like, if the Lord is blessing me with that favor, like, why am I doing this for somebody else? But my fear was, I don't have the networking connection. Like, where am I going to get the business? I don't have children who go to school with, so-and-so's child who's a CEO here, or I don't play golf at the country club, So that was my biggest fear. So that's what kind of held me back from doing it. But I talked to a mentor, one of my mentors, and he was like, Kawanna, you will have no problem getting work. Like, he was like, there's enough work out there. People will come to you. You don't have to go look for it. And so I was like, okay. And what ended up happening is some people who had wanted to hire me, so they reached out to me, and I initially was talking to them about working with them. And I was like, once I'd made my decision to go independent, I said, no, you can't hire me, but you can subcontract with me. Like, right. I'm not, I won't come. And so they had 2 projects for me there. And then when I left my company, I had a huge project already going on, and I knew that the client would want no one but me. Mm-hmm. And so my company kind of had to subcontract back with me. I didn't do that like strategic. It just was what it was. And so I had those 3 projects going on. And then the Lord has blessed that recruiters call me every week with either full-time or contract work. And so I ended up having a recruiter. I have another project through a recruiter. And then one of my clients referred me to another client. And so I have business through them. So I've been working since January, and it's October. And literally I have no website. I don't even have cards made. And I have been so busy that like Theodore and I are working like full time. Like, the Lord has just brought the business to me. Wow. So I haven't even had time yet to slow down. And I've worked on the website, but I haven't had time I literally have not had time to finish it. But I've been so busy, I haven't had to. So I'm not saying
that's a good excuse.
That's a blessing. That is a blessing. That is a blessing. I actually had two people contact me about 2 weeks ago with 2 full-time projects, and I had to tell them I can't. Wow. So wow. It's a blessing. Like, I'm like, Lord, like, I can't even believe, again, I have no website. I don't even have a website, so once things slow down, then I'll finish the website, and then I'll start reaching out, but I haven't even done that. Like, wow. Yeah.
That leap of faith was it. Wow.
It was. It was quite a leap, because it's like, I'm not married, right? So if I'm not bringing any income, who's going to pay my bills? Like, I don't have someone to pay my bills for me. It's not like, it's not like if we have a shared income and there's a pot, right. It's on me. And so it was scary, but I fasted and prayed about it. And when that CFO had told me to think about it, like, when I really gave it thought, I was like, this is really what I want to do. And it's like, I had such a peace about it. I was excited. I was like, and so I ended up going out to eat with one of my coworkers at the time. And we were friends, and I was kind of complaining about the things I wasn't happy about at work. And she was like, Kawanna, like, why aren't you doing your own thing? And I was like, I'm scared. Like, all of my friends, I was complaining. I was like, I had like a couple things going on at the same time at work that was just making me so upset. And so I was complaining constantly. And my friends were like, why aren't you doing your own thing? And I was like, I'm scared. And the one friend told me, she's like, Kawanna, do you have any money saved? I said, yes. She was like, why don't you just try? She was like, the worst thing that can happen is you'll have some time when you don't have business and you might go through some of your savings, but then the time you do have business, you'll be building it back up. She was like, but I don't think you're going to ever have a problem finding business. But she was like, but if you do, you have that money. And I was like, okay, that's true. And then she made the point. She was like, and then if it doesn't work out, you can always come back. You know that we'll hire you back, or, you have recruiters calling you. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to look back and have regrets. I don't want to look back and say what could have been. And I was like, why not just try? So that's what I did.
Yeah, like I the more I interview people, I'm noticing like the worst or the thing that gets in the way the most of lots of people is fear. And it usually seems the thing that they're most fearful about ends up being the catalyst for their greatest success. So it's something, and we did an episode actually with A.T. Westney where he talked about the philosophy of fear, and just getting over that hump. It's crazy. I just did an interview before this one, and we were talking about how he's an artist, and he wanted to put out a piece, but he was scared. And he didn't think, he wasn't sure if everybody would like it or if it would take off or things like that. So, but it ended up being the thing that pretty much set off his career.
Yeah.
So like that fear thing, and I mean, I watched tons and tons of motivational speakers, YouTube videos and things like that. And this guy, Gary Vee, the phrase that he coined is document over create, which basically means push your stuff out there, like keep doing your thing instead of trying to make this perfect scenario where everything is going to go okay, because that's how you lose.
Years ago when I was working one time, one of the controllers at my job took me out to eat, and she was like, did you feel pressure having a dad that was a doctor and a mom that was a lawyer? Like, did you feel pressure? Like, did they try to pressure you to do one thing or another? And I was like, no, like literally all they did, they said, you can be whatever you want. They said, they just continued to pour into me, like anything you want to do, you can do it. Anything you set your mind to, and we expect greatness. Like, it wasn't like taskmaster. They just instilled belief, and they made me believe in myself. And it's not something that I even realized was happening until I got older and found everybody doesn't do that. I was like, that's just, to me, that's just normal. Yeah. My aunties and uncles at church, like, they just expected greatness, and they just told me, you're capable of this. Oh, baby girl, you're going to do this. And so that's just what got into my head. And so I went to Oakwood College I got into finance because I took a class. I was going to ask that. Yeah. So my parents, they really, when I was growing up, I don't know why, I just had this desire to like either be a cashier at a grocery store, or like not like as a career, but like do that, or I wanted to work at Cheesecake Factory. No, but like when I was there, I was like, oh, this seems cool. Like I wanted to do it like as a summer job. That's what I mean, as a summer job. Yeah. And they would not let us do that. And I was like, what? Like that seems like I don't know. But they made us work in their office. And so both of my parents work for themselves. And I was like, oh, wonk wonk. But they were teaching us different things about how to navigate in a professional environment. And so in my mom's office, I had to do a lot of writing and all that kind of stuff. So she really pushed me when it came to that. But in my dad's office, we'd be in there every summer. And that's when I got exposure to wanting to improve things. Because I'd see different things about how the office was running. And I was like, oh, if they do this, this will, be more efficient. If they do this, they can get in. He's taking too long with this client because, he's so personable. Like, he'll just be talking. Yeah. And I'm like, no. You need to get to the next patient, And so I'd be cramming people in and, like, giving him less time and, just things to, like, increase business. And I was like, I love this. And what I realized, and this is when I was in high school, I was like, doctors and all that, they're great at medicine, but they may not be wonderful at like running the business. And I was like, there are probably other people like him who need somebody like me to come in and help them see how to run their business better. So that was what my plan was from high school. That's what I saw myself doing, going someplace and helping people, run their business better. So I took an accounting class in high school and it clicked. I was like, oh, I love this. Like, I just loved accounting. And Yeah. So my major in college was accounting initially. And then I realized that accounting is just crunching numbers and finance is like the analyst.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
and I was like, oh, that's more interesting than crunching. Like crunching is boring. And so I switched my major to finance because my brain, I'm analytical or whatever. And so I switched over to finance and like, I don't know. I love business. I love travel. And so that's how I got into business. So, graduating from school, I ended up getting a job at GE. And I can tell the story of that if you want, but I was blessed to be able to get a job there, and I got exposure to, and the program is so amazing because you're getting exposure to like top level leadership at the company of GE. I'm at the CFO of GE, the CEO of GE. And so I was in aircraft, I met the CEO and CFO of aircraft, but I'm talking about the whole GE, met him.
Right. Yeah.
Like it was a leadership program. And so we had like quarterly meetings with like the CFO, and you get a lot of exposure. You're exposed to a lot of people. And so I remember initially feeling like, man, all these other people went to like Ivy League schools and I'm over here from like Lolo Oakwood that nobody's heard of. But I don't know, God just like made up what maybe I may not have had exposure to in a smaller school. Like I was able to just hang with them, and yeah, so I did that. And then, like I said, I moved into Deloitte.
Wow. Yeah. So from what I'm grasping, you working in your mom and dad's office, both of them being entrepreneurs, having their own businesses, their own practices themselves, do you see that kind of being like the foundation of your kind of entrepreneurial desire, that drive in you to kind of want to venture out and do your own thing?
You know what? Subconsciously, yes. Like, it's not like I looked at them and said, oh, okay, I want to be like mommy and daddy having their own thing. Because the thing that was interesting is being an entrepreneur has highs and it has lows.
Oh, yeah.
And so watching them, I saw both, so I was like,
wow,
this is risky. And as a matter of fact, I'm like super risk averse. Like, and so I'm like, oh, that's too risky, But, and the reason why I say subconsciously is because I think though, just watching it, when I had the vision of myself, it was like running my own thing, but it wasn't, that was even knowing that it was, I don't know. It's like, I feel like it became a part of me without me actually sitting and making a conscious decision, but like that just became the vision that I had for myself, I guess, because that's what I saw,
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's interesting that you said that, because that's such a good exposure, because now in this, like maybe like the past 2 years going onward, entrepreneurship is cool. Like you see them, like they follow me on Instagram every day, these entrepreneurs who have their own whatever it is, and like now it's like cool, like entrepreneurs are rock stars,
right?
And I mean, before you kind of got looked at crazy, like, oh, so you're trying to be broke kind of type thing.
Right.
So, but the tables are slowly turning. But the fact that you didn't just see, the glory things that people put on social media or on their website or whatever, you got to see the highs and the lows of like what it really means to be an entrepreneur. That it's really hard, and you got to work lots of hours and so much work. And if you don't do it, you will crash and burn. So I find that so interesting how it kind of affected how you were like, do I really want to go into this? Or, trying to find that safety, kind of a little bit, which I think did have its purpose. And we could kind of get into that as we go throughout the rest of the story. But I do want to know how you got into the whole GE. How did you get that job offer? How did that even happen when you got inducted into that whole, that's an amazing company. Like, that's huge.
Oh, yeah, it is. And I'll try to be short. So, I'm super long-winded. I can talk forever.
This is the platform to do it. So,
but the way I have to attribute it to God. So my senior year, that's when you're supposed to do all your interviews and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, I have to step back to my sophomore year and just show how this played in. So I was just chilling, just ready to have a nice, relaxing summer. And people were like, oh, no, in business, like you need to have internships in the summer. I was like, oh, really? Wait, I didn't know that. And so I had waited very long. And so a lot of the internships, the dates had closed to be able to get one. I was like, shoot. But I happened to be able to get one at University of Hartford. It was a risk management internship. And so you do risk management classes, and then you go and work in an insurance company or like in like a risk management department. And so I had no interest whatsoever in that, but I was like, I need to have an internship, and that's the only one that was available. But God was leading in that. So I go, and everyone else, every single other person in the program, it was probably like maybe 25 of us, maybe 30. Everyone got placed in an insurance company. I am the only one who got placed in United Technologies. And United Technologies, this was their first year in the program. Everybody else was like at Cigna, Aetna, like everyone, because we were in Hartford, which is like and United Technologies, they put me in their risk management department. So I wasn't at an insurance company. But United Technologies owns Pratt & Whitney, Otis, and Carrier. Carrier, who makes air conditioners, Otis, who does elevators, and Pratt & Whitney, who does aircraft engines. Okay, so.
Oh, wow. I have seen Otis on elevators.
Yeah,
I
and
never thought about that.
Notice,
wow.
And Carrier is on that. Yeah, and so so I did my internship, and things went fine, and I was blessed there a number of reasons. One, because I got a mentor there. This lady, a black lady, who just took an interest in me, and we ended up continuing our relationship after, and I'll tell you how she comes into play. But then I was working for these two guys, and everything went fine. And my internship was really more chill than everybody else. Everybody else was coming home stressed, and I was like, oh, mine was kind of chill. But the project that they gave me, I apparently did a good job. And at the end, I remember they told me, we don't give out letters of recommendation. And I was like, well, I didn't even ask for one, but okay. And it's funny because I got home 2 weeks later and they had mailed me a letter of recommendation. So maybe they were trying to trick me. I don't know. But anyway, I'll tell you how all that comes into play. My senior year, I happened to, God led me, I was in Walmart. So at Oakwood, Walmart is right around the corner from the school. I was in Walmart and I ran into a teacher, Miss Gunn, who was not even one of my teachers. I didn't even have any classes with her. And she just happened, I didn't even know her. I don't even know that we'd even spoken. And she was like, hey, are you going to the NABA conference? I was like, the what? And National Association of Black Accountants. She's like, yeah. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And she's like, well, you need to go. Like, that's where they have all these Fortune 500 companies come and they're looking for minorities to hire. And I was like, oh, okay. And like the deadline was like, I think it had already passed. And she's like, you got to get stuff in tonight. And so I'm like scrambling to, get in all my stuff. And so you send in like your resume and your transcript and all that stuff in advance. And then when you go there, the companies review it. And based on how you present, in your paperwork, they decide who they want to interview with.
This transaction happened in Walmart?
Well, yeah, she's the one who told me to. Well, she told me to sign up for it.
Yeah, right. So so she just stopped you, like, oh, while you're putting that bread on the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah. I just ran it. And what's crazy is I didn't even know her. Like, I mean, I knew who she was.
Right.
She was in the business department, but I didn't take classes. I'm saying this was God. Like, it
That's
literally
crazy,
was. Because I mean, like, what was the odds? And so I signed up for it. And so when I went to the conference, and my grades are pretty good. I went to the conference. I remember there were 3 of us in our group who literally had like probably 10 or 12 interviews. Some other people had 1, 2, 3.
Wow.
Like we had a lot. So I interviewed with all the generals, General Electric, General Motors, General Mills, Bank One at the time, Bank of America. Not Bank of America, Nations Bank. This is before their merger. Wells Fargo. I can't remember all the other ones, but we had a full day of interviewing with all these top companies. And when I interviewed with and where I wanted to go, where my plan was to go to Nations Bank, because I've always liked to travel and I saw Nations Bank in different cities. So it's like, oh, if I go there, I can work in different cities. So that was my plan. God had a different plan. So when I interviewed at the guy with GE, I talked to him and I happened to mention what happened I had my letter of recommendation from my internship. And he's like, oh, well, let me see that. That's impressive. And I showed it to him. He was like, oh, like, this is good. And I was like, okay.
So
well,
you
look
carried your letter of recommendation with you?
I just brought it. I just had it.
That might be a good tip.
Yeah. And I told him, I was like, it was unsolicited. I didn't ask for it. And I was like, I happen to have it. He's like, yeah, let me see. And that's the only person I showed it to. Like, I didn't show it to anyone else. So anyway, you have your first interviews at the conference. And then, and the thing that's so wonderful about it, they come there looking for minorities. So, they're going to be, that's what the companies are looking for in that particular conference. And sometimes it'd be hard to get your foot in the door, maybe other ways.
Yeah.
So you go through the conference, and then based on who likes you, you get some second interviews. So the Lord blessed, and I had a few second interviews. Again, all the ones that I mentioned, those are the ones I remember having a second interview with. So when I went out to to GE, no. When I went to Nations Bank, because that was my first choice, the interview went well, but I didn't get the job. I remember I didn't get the job, and I was so sad because that's where I wanted to be. And so I had my interview with GE. And when I went out to GE, so they fly you out, and they had, put me up in a hotel, and they had put some information about the company in the hotel to read up on it before you go. And I saw the GE CEO was like the world's most admired CEO 2 years in a row. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Because GE was not on my radar. Because in my mind, GE was like light bulbs. That's all I thought about when I heard GE.
Appliances and stuff.
Yeah, like I didn't think it was and so I was like, wait a minute. I started reading. I was like, wait a minute. GE is a great company. Wait a minute. Like I didn't realize that. And so when I went for my interviews, and the reason why I mentioned my internship is Pratt & Whitney, I interviewed with GE Aircraft. Pratt & Whitney makes aircraft engines. Pratt & Whitney is GE's biggest competitor. So the only ones who make aircraft engines are Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, and GE at the time. And so when they saw that on my internship, on my resume, like when I was going for my interviews at GE, it became like a joke or a little icebreaker. Everybody, they were like, oh, do we need to hide our trade secrets because you're going to go back and tell, and so that just ended up being a blessing right there, because that gave an easy intro for, all of my talking with everybody when I went for the interview. And, I ended up getting that job. And when I talked to my mentor, well, actually before that, I saw that GE was it was way better of a company than Bank of America or Nations Bank. Yeah, which I wanted for myself. And what's so funny, God is so funny, because Nations Bank actually called me back and tried to offer me a job. So it was a program that I was getting into, and I guess they had 12 slots, and I guess I must have been number 13. And so one of their people must have declined, so I was the next one. So they called me. They were like, oh. And they were offering less money. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, you know what? Send me the offer letter. I'll look at it. And I called my mentor who I met, when I was working at UTC. And she was like, Kawanna, she's like, it's not a question. She's like, GE is so much better than Bank of America. She's like, it's not even, or Nations Bank at the time. She's like, it's not even a question. And I held both of those offer letters so I could say, this is what I had. This is what I saw for myself, but God had something so much better. And so that's how I got into the program at GE. A phenomenal program. And it's so crazy because, after I graduated and I was working, like my mom would be calling me like, can you talk to this person from this school, like this Ivy League school, or this person? Not like a ton of people, but a few, because these were people who were out of school and could not find work. And she's like, they just want to know, like, how did you do it? And I'm like the Lord ordered my steps. Had I not run into her in the Walmart, right. I don't know what I would have done. I didn't have any plans. But the Lord, he set it up. And working at GE is one of the best things I could have done. Having GE on your resume opens so many doors. It's a top company. I got exposure. Oh yeah. So that's how I ended up at GE. So I started doing consulting at Deloitte. Mm-hmm. I was there for, I think, maybe 4 years. And then that's when I wanted to get off the road. And I went to Morgan Franklin, and I was there until I left.
So you said you wanted to get off the road. So it was having you travel a lot at Deloitte?
Yeah. You're on the road Monday through Thursday, sometimes Friday, depending on the project. Yeah. Wow.
So what kind of traveling were you doing with them? Like, was it from city to city or?
No. So you just be on a project. So depending on the length of the project, if it's a few weeks, a few months, it can be a year. I think I actually was on a project almost a year. So, I had one project I had to go to Dallas every week, and that was a pain because, the time difference. And then that one actually had to stay till Friday. So that was annoying. I'd have to leave on Friday morning to come back home. Wow. And so I had other ones in New York. New York wasn't bad because you can take the train. I liked the New York projects, but still, I had a few in New York. I had one in North Carolina. I had one, where else was I? And then I had one actually in Virginia for a while, so that was not bad. I did that one. That was over a year. Atlanta. I was Atlanta for about a year. So yeah. Wow. So the traveling, so it has pluses and minuses. I liked the traveling. And while I was with Deloitte, I ended up being on a project, and I got to go to Spain and Thailand again. How crazy! I went to Puerto Rico with work. I went to Mexico with work. I went to France, and I went to Germany, all that with work. So I was blessed to get on, I didn't have a hell experience, at all, but the travel, it makes you tired. when you come in, especially let's say just a Thursday one, Monday through Thursday, which is more normal. I mean, I'd put my bag down Thursday night. Sunday night at like 9, I'm like, oh no, I haven't even moved my bag from the door, and I have to get on the road again in the morning. It can wear on you. But there are a lot of perks. You get your points. I had all kinds of points, all kind of, traveling first class all the time. You get upgraded because you have status. But it also can be just very tiring. You're living out of a suitcase. You're always eating in restaurants. Some people like that. I did it for 5 years and I was over it.
Okay. So that's one thing that I did notice right from the jump. I mean, your Instagram is just like so eclectic. Like it's just the travel pictures with like you like in some desert somewhere looking like, I'm like, where is she? Like, where is she this week? So I kind of wanted to get to that because oftentimes we can equate success or turning your dreams into reality as having money or having status or having a successful career. But I feel like life is so much, has so many more dimensions to it. And I mean, clearly you've had a successful career, but I mean, I'm sure every person has more than one part of them. You can't just have your career and that be your whole life. So when it went to traveling, which I see that you like to do, it seems like as a hobby, was that always a part of your dream? Did you always like to travel?
I've always been interested in travel. Yeah, I have. And this again goes back to growing up and my parents trying to give us every opportunity that they could, sacrificing so much to make sure that the children had more than they did. So I started traveling when I was young, actually. So I played the violin. Even though I hated it, it gave me exposure to a lot of things. So I was in this orchestra called the Adventist Youth Ensemble, which is a group of maybe 12 of us young kids. And so with that group, we traveled a few places. Like I remember us going to Bahamas. I remember we played at the Kennedy Center. We played at local churches and probably a little other traveling with there. But then I was in the orchestra at Tacoma Academy, and the orchestra took us to London and Iceland and Scotland on one big trip. I remember that. Wow. And then, the travel started. And then there was an exchange program between, I guess, Maryland or, United States and this school in Spain, Sagunto de Adventista. And so some friends and I, our sophomore year in high school, went to Spain for 6 weeks. And so I don't know. I just love so much like the exposure to other things and cultures is just so interesting to me. And so it all kind of happened organically. Like I've always loved it. And it's funny because I remember in my 8th grade yearbook, we had to put, what we were going to do. And I had business and I changed it to international business because I've always wanted to travel. And so, and I've never like sought after it, just things have just ended up happening, and then, we went to Mexico for our class trip. But then when I got to college, I signed up to do a mission trip in Haiti. I didn't end up going, but that's when I got my passport. And once we got out of college, my friends and I started doing a little bit of traveling. And then I started like expanding and going with different sets of friends and just started just going all over. So I've been so many places. I love traveling so much. Like every time I run into somebody, they're like, oh, what are you doing in the States? Like, why aren't you someplace? Or they're like, what's your next trip? And I'm like, I just had a friend over today and she was like, where's your next trip? I was like, well, right now for next year, I'm thinking about Switzerland and Bali. So I have to look into that some more. But yeah, I want to go places I haven't been, but I love traveling so much. And so, yeah.
So how many, do you know how many countries you've been to?
No, I started trying to count. So I started a new Instagram page. So on my last trip, people have told me to do this before. They're like, start, having a travel page. And I was like, no. And one person like kept pestering me. And so when I got back, I was like, okay. So I started an Instagram travel page called Away with Kay. And when I started posting my pictures, I didn't realize I've been so many places. I was like, oh my goodness. And so I started like counting in my head, but I haven't written down. So I need to try to write down how many countries. But I've been to a lot. I don't remember.
What's your favorite country so far?
I don't know. People ask me that. And I don't know. I love many. I'll say I have. Let's say I have a top list. I don't know if I have one. I loved Greece, so I've been to Greece twice. I just came back from there. I was there in August. I love Greece. It's so beautiful. I will go back there again. Love Greece. I love Morocco. I loved Morocco. So many things to see. It's like sensory overload. Morocco was amazing. I loved South Africa so much. I will go back to South Africa. I will go back to Morocco. Those are the top 3 that come to mind without even thinking about it. No. Oh my goodness. I went to Italy this summer too. The south of France, I want to go back there. Everything I did this summer, I want to do it again. So we did like Florence. I want to go back there. We did the Amalfi Coast, Capri. I want to go back there. Oh my gosh. So yeah, all of those were great. All of those I want to go back to. I love Barcelona. Love Barcelona. Yeah. So I love a lot of places. I've only had one place that I did not have a good experience in. But yeah.
Where was that? Can you say that?
Yeah, it was India. But it was the part that we went to. The pollution. Oh my gosh. It was terrible.
Wow.
I mean, there's trash on the side of the streets, and then driving, I was like, Lord, we're going to die. Like they drive so crazy. Yeah. And it's just, one of my friends, I was visiting a friend who worked there, and the pollution is so bad, she had to wear a mask because it triggered her asthma. She ended up going to the hospital while we were there. Wow. It's just so many people. It's so many people. The food was amazing. But that's why I didn't like it, because it just was too congested for me. I can't focus in all that congestion. I was like, oh my gosh. But I did go see Taj Mahal, so that was great. But we were in New Delhi, and no shade to New Delhi. It was just too many people for me. I just couldn't do it. Yep.
So for somebody, because your story, I mean, first of all, you're a great storyteller, because I was just like, wow. But if someone was just so captivated into this interview that they didn't get to, take notes on anything, what's one piece of advice for having someone turn their dream into reality that you would give them that say, okay, pick up your pencil or pen and write this down for going into the future?
So even though you're saying one, there are a couple things that I want to say. One of them is you have to establish yourself, right? So, and you have to become your best self. I would never say for somebody to jump on their own, not having some kind of exposure or experience to what you're doing. And I had the blessing and curse of, when I was at Deloitte, working for some people who were super anal. And it was a pain in my butt at the time, but I listened to what they told me, and I was like a sponge, and I took it all in. And so my level of performance rose so much higher. And so I would say, so by the time I was ready to jump, I was already performing at this level. I had already established a reputation. I had already done, so I wasn't just jumping like, hey, I'm this newbie. No, I had people who could vouch for me. This is how she performed. This is what she does. So you want to make sure that any feedback that you're getting, what I would do when I would get papers back, like let's say I'd write an email or I could make a deck, and it'd come back with changes. As offended as I would be, and I would be nice and offended, I would look at but then I also was humble enough. My dad always said, be teachable. I would look at what I had done, and I looked at what they would do, and I would compare, and I would see what did they do differently. And I would start to adjust myself so that I could see, okay, here's what I could do better to do better at what I was doing. So I would say, do whatever you have to do, number one, to be your best self. Take the advice of speak it out. If you are just going and you don't have somebody who is pouring into you, if you don't have a leader who is like telling you how to do stuff better, find a mentor and ask and get advice, and let that help to make you who you are. Having a mentor is invaluable. I have so many people. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Yeah. Because I mean, I have heard that a lot of times, and I think mentors are absolutely invaluable, but I have also struggled with, and I know other people have come to me saying the same thing. Well, how do I find a mentor? How do I put myself out, or find a good quality mentor who is interested in taking time to help groom you? You have people that, you could kind of hitch on to, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, I'll take you under my wing or whatever, but they're not really invested. How do you come across it? Almost seems like it has to be some type of serendipity involved in order or some type of divine intervention for that to happen.
Yeah.
So how do you like put yourself in the right place to get that?
So, it is part and parcel of just like right place at right time. It's partly that, but it's also partly you kind of putting yourself out there, like, and knowing that no, you may ask somebody and they say no, but like I have a number of like little informal mentees right now, people who have just called me and like, hey, can we go to lunch? And I am one of those people who is going to pour because I was poured into, so I don't fall into the category of no, I'm not going to do it. But the fact is, who knows if I was the first person they called? Maybe they called somebody else who said no, but then they made that next call. So, it's like you kind of got to keep your eyes out. I'm spiritual, so I would definitely say prayer is going to be part of it. Pray for somebody, for God to put somebody in your path. And it doesn't even have to be somebody directly in your field per se. Like it can just be somebody who is in your life who you look up to. It could be a teacher, or you could talk to a teacher and say, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. Do you have anybody you would recommend? If the person goes to church is a really good place to find, like some of my people, they're people from church, or they're people who I used to, some of the young girls who I worked with who reached out or whatever. But there are a lot of different places. So church is one way to find one. School is one way to find one. And then like, as you're looking for jobs, also just ask people like, hey, I'm looking for somebody in my field or somebody, do you have anybody you would recommend? Like, don't wait for stuff to fall into your lap. Like you have to make things happen. That's what I would say about, you sometimes have to take initiative. The other thing I would say, so finding a mentor is invaluable. But then the next thing is, and like I said, making yourself your best self. Like take the advice of when you get it, do not be offended. Sit there and be like, okay, this is just gonna make me better. Like that's and that's how you elevate your game. Find somebody, that you want to pattern yourself after. And that's how you do the mentor thing. You're like, oh, hey, how did you learn this? How did you know to do that? And most times, that's the thing. Most times, because no one is who they are, in my opinion, no one is who they are without somebody helping. And so I think that most people will want to help. But anyway, two pieces of advice that this one guy gave to me years ago that I've carried with me and I tell everybody, get comfortable with being, no. The first one is anything can be learned. That one piece has helped me so much because in consulting, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You get thrown into situations where you don't know. You got to smile and pretend like you know what they're talking about, and you can have no idea what they're talking about. But the advice of anything can be learned means I may be sitting in that meeting, have no idea what you're talking about, but I can learn it. Right. Like you never, so anyone who is doing anything, some things may come naturally to someone and someone else, they may not naturally know it, but they can learn it. So it may take someone 7 hours where it only took that person an hour, but at the end of those time periods, you can both be at the same level. Like, never feel too intimidated by anything that you're facing, like, oh, I can't do it. No, you can learn it. You may have to do more work. I was on one project in Dallas. Whew, that project kicked my butt. They put me on an implementation for Oracle. I had never implemented Oracle a day in my life. I was like, what the heck? And I didn't have anyone who could help me because the part that I was running, the work stream I was running, no one else on the project knew it. I'm like, what the heck? But what did I do? That advice came in so clearly. At night, I would be home reading. I'd be doing whatever I had to do. I'd be Googling. And so the client would ask me a question, and I'd be like, oh, okay, well, let me just look into that.
Right.
You answer with confidence, like And I'd be up. I remember nights being up till 4 o'clock in the morning. And by the next day, I'd get in there and I'd talk to them, and they'd have no idea that I had no clue what was going on. Mm-hmm. Because you can learn it. Anything can be learned. So never be intimidated by not knowing something. The fact is, this may require more work, but I can learn it. Always do your best. Always put your best foot forward. People are always watching. Make good decisions. Oh my gosh. And yeah. Those are a few of the big things.
You just dropped like a whole bunch of bombs on that one. That was so good.
It's so funny. That's funny.
Wow. Yeah. That stuff is so important. It's really the little things that help set you apart. when people are paying attention, like you said, people are always paying attention. And whenever I have gotten opportunities, it really has been the small things that people notice. Thanks so much, Kawanna. Like, you were awesome. You were so engaging. I didn't really have to do a lot to make this an awesome episode. Well, there it is. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please tell me what you think. As I said in the beginning of the episode, you could DM me on Instagram or message me on Facebook, both at the Muse Report Podcast. Screenshot on your phone if you haven't already that you listened to the episode. Put it on your Instagram story, and I will look and see who's listening and repost some of those stories. Hope you enjoyed Kawanna's story. I know I did. If you want to follow her travel page on Instagram, it is Away with K, which is K-A-Y, Away with K. You can see some of her travel photos and possibly be inspired to give you some places that you might want to go and visit in the near future. So thanks for tuning into this episode. Rigo, I think we're going to cue the outro. Let's go.
Oh, that's the end of our MRP episode. Thank you for listening, everything, but it's time to go. We'll have a new one for you next week on the flip side. But until then, don't kill the vibe, subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Don't kill the vibe, make sure you go ahead and subscribe.
Hey guys, Clee here. Thanks so much for listening to the Build Your Vision podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I would think you did if you stayed all the way to the end. The best thing that you could do to help support this show is by sharing it with somebody. By you just taking a few seconds to recommend this show to somebody, you are making a huge impact, not only on the success of this show, but possibly on that person's life.